Does that show is recording for you?
I don't know.
Or
Let
can you
me let
tell?
me let me exit out of the full screen. You are in the recording. Recording.
Okay, yeah,
Yes.
okay.
Are you doing an intro? You have to cut the beginning of this in.
Oh, yeah, I got this shit out at the start. Well, welcome back everyone to Class Horrorcast. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron, and I'm joined as always by my best friend, my
Yes.
other horror aficionado, conspiracy theorist, man of many talents, actually, rapper. Anything
Yes.
else? Did I miss anything?
Um. I'm also I pimp on the weekends.
Oh, nice. I knew he was going to say something like that. How
Yes.
are we? It's been a while.
Yeah. I know. It has been a while, but according to Aaron, we will be consistent from now on. So it's all up
We
to
will.
him because I push him all the time. I'm good. It's an early morning on my side. I literally have coffee with. I didn't. The other whiskey I had was Scotch. It doesn't taste that good, but it will get your morning started. That's for sure. Because all the fans that realize that we have to take into account our time difference, so we work with what we have, and that's why sometimes it's kind of hard to like be constantly pumping out episodes because of the strange time difference. But we're getting locked down on this stuff, and we have many ideas.
It's so irritating that there's a time difference, to be honest.
There shouldn't be, yeah, because we all don't we live on a flat Earth or something like that where it's
Yeah,
it should
it's
be the
just
same.
like, it's so annoying though. Um,
So funny.
but yeah, welcome to another episode of the podcast. It's been a while. In this episode, we are venturing into the desolate and unforgiving New Mexico desert to unravel the horrors that lurk within the hills. That's right, we're diving deep into 2006's horror remake that shocked audiences and redefined survival horror. The Hills Have Eyes.
100%. Rewatching this, like we'll talk about my thoughts about the film and stuff like that. Because one thing I do for prep for the episode where Aaron gets all the information, I usually write down my thoughts as the movie goes, which we'll get into that. But this this movie holds a certain place in my ripped out heart that I'll eat on the side of a cliff. Because when this came out, I was about 15. Um, and then I don't think I saw it in theaters, but I definitely watched it as soon as it came out on DVD. I might have saw it in theaters. But this was a movie that actually did disturb me and that did like make me what horror is supposed to do. It made you feel like uncomfortable. And I think that not a lot of horror does that anymore. Like to be honest, I watched that new Boogeyman movie. I thought it was trash, man.
Yeah, and I feel really bad for saying that because I had a lot of respect for Rob Savage and what
Yeah.
he done with that movie Host and things like that, and his writer and co-producer Jed Shepard, who is a really good guy. Um, and from them coming from the UK, to get some of the deals, I think they've gotten like a 5 picture deal now with Universal and Blumhouse. To
Yeah.
get that off the back of an indie movie shot during COVID was like insane. But I feel like that with that movie, he succumbed to that thing that all new hot directors do, where the studio just beats you to a pulp.
I the only like my why I have a bone to pick with it is because like it seemed like it was going a good direction, but my issue, unless you're doing a movie like this where it's meant to show everything and you're supposed to see the nitty gritty details of what is happening and who these people are and all that stuff, right? My beef is always with these movies. They try to use too much CGI and it just like making the boogeyman a creature bothered me. I'm like the idea of having something where you can't really see it. I feel like the boogeyman from like years and years ago when I was like a kid or a teenager, it came out. I thought that one was better, and that one was not even that
Yeah, the
good.
one from like 2005, I think it is.
Something like that, yeah. And I just some of these new movies, man, they just are disappointing. And I think it's because there's who knows the woke culture and being everyone's being sensitive. I don't necessarily know what it really is, but certain new movies I've watched have really disappointed me. Except for um, recently I watched give me a second um Pet Cemetery, the new one that's on Paramount. I actually really liked it. Well,
I
and
haven't
I've
watched
if it
it.
makes you yeah, it's I actually really liked it. I thought it was different. And then I'm trying to think there's another movie that we also watched in the Revenge or whatever, or Becky's Wrath. Awesome. Like I would
Okay.
talk about the Becky movies. It's just the
I
idea
would
of this little girl beating the shit out of you.
I'll take your recommendations from now on, since you gave me that recommendation about the Children of the Corn, and I loved
So
that.
good.
So I'm kind of envisioning liking that new Pet Cemetery, a
It was
similar kind
good.
of way.
I really liked it. I thought it was different. I thought it held up. And I just find a lot of movies try too hard nowadays, and it's so disappointing. Or they show too much. They show way too much. To me, that Boogeyman movie it was a replica of like seven other movies. The like, oh, the female character that's kind of been, beaten down and plagued by this thing, and then the other character finds her or him or whatever, and they fight the monster together. It's been done so many times, it's recycled, and I will still enjoy what we get, and I'll watch it. And but I'm an avid horror fan that really thinks that the genre is slowly going down a hill. Like there's some that things that are good, some things that are bad, but especially with recent new movies, come on, it's not great.
It's strange how I've noticed it a lot more lately, where I've actually enjoyed things that aren't like the blockbuster movies
Yeah,
more
yeah, I agree.
than
I
like the
agree.
ones with the big hype. Like I feel like with Boogeyman, I was like super excited beforehand,
Yeah.
and like after the fact, I couldn't help but feel like it was um how would I say it? Like a lot of like the trailer and the different things, it sort of felt like it was all put there to use that gimmick with the like ball light,
Oh,
the
I know the
moonlight thing.
red like dink, dink, dink.
It's
Yeah.
just like I don't know. I was like, it's a bit
And
like
and I think it's worth it to do for all the fans out there. We will be doing more like I feel like even once a month, every other month, doing some sort of rant episode. I've talked about doing that on my show too, because me and Billy attempted to do the Sandown Clown, but for like 20 minutes we were talking about how there's schools that have cat boxes in it. And it's just like it's hard to like get in that right direction. And it's like realistically that episode could have been 40 minutes, but then it was an hour and 20 minutes because we were like talking about the weirdest stuff that's going on in the world. So I think on both sides of the world when it comes to our shows, it would be a good idea for the fans to kind of hear our take on stuff. I would love to just chop it up about horror movies, and especially the recent stuff that we've watched, because I just find it disappointing. And I will go back and I will watch these movies that I've never seen before from the 90s or 80s or even like 70s, and I'll enjoy it more than some of these new movies that have all these effects and CGI. And rewatching this is a movie I can tell you I've probably watched like, I don't know, 30, 40 times. Like I feel I've watched this a lot throughout my childhood and throughout my life.
yeah. Same goes for me. So how would you pronounce the director's name?
Oh, I have to look this up because I was watching a little thing before we started,
Mm-hmm.
and is he Finnish? Because I feel like there's all these dudes that are like Finnish or they're from Norway or something like that.
Something like
And
that, or French something. Because he done High Tension, right? That was a French movie,
yeah,
so I think he's
oh, he's
French.
I don't know. It's always just like to me. I can't tell the difference between accents are just so bad, but it just seemed like
Because I've heard,
there's always those random dudes. You remember Nightmare on Elm Street, where it was like that random dude that they got? I think he was Finnish, and they always get those like dudes from like overseas to try to put these like Hollywood productions together.
because I've heard Alexand.
Alexandria,
Yeah, so they,
Alexander,
yeah, so they pronounce it
Aja,
Alexander, and then I've heard
Aja,
people say aha,
aha.
which is really weird. I don't know
Yeah.
how it's actually pronounced, but yeah, this movie takes us on a gruesome tale, on a harrowing road trip with the unsuspecting Carter family, whose journey through the hills becomes a descent into madness, Mutated beings, the results of past nuclear testing, emerge from the shadows, and what follows is a relentless fight for survival, filled with disturbing twists and gruesome encounters.
Like I still love this movie.
Same.
And know what's crazy? The original Hills Have Eyes, I think I watched maybe once when I was like 10 or 11, right? I recently went back and watched the original, and it's a totally different story. Really, it is. When it comes to like the details of it, it's fairly different. Um, and I actually really enjoyed it. I'm a huge fan of Wes Craven, and as a crossover, I want to do a Famous Dead about him, like a whole episode, kind of diving into Wes Craven because I'm a huge fan. It's always like The Hills Have Eyes, The People Under the Stairs, like stuff like that. I love that movie also. But it's cool, this whole premise of this film, because I feel like this freaks everybody out, and I have a conspiracy theory obviously when we get into it a little bit, but this is based off the Sonny Bean family that me and Billy covered during like COVID, because I was like, oh, this is just something small, and this is the first time we tried to utilize being over the computer, and we did our best, but it's not the same. We got used to this being able to do it from across the world and got good at it, but with me and Billy that actually like consistently do the episodes in house together, kind of thing, it was like tough to really vibe off each other, right? But that was still a fun episode because he had no idea about it, and it's based off essentially the Scottish cannibal family that like went out into the mountains and then would pick off travelers. And those stories could always be sensationalized, but there is truth about it. And then it seems like Wes Craven kind of took that whole idea, because this exists. Like, have you seen this? I've told you I want to do like an episode about cannibal tribes and stuff like that. This stuff like this does exist out there and has existed, especially you think about like the 1800s, even before that, where people had to survive through famines and stuff like that. And Irish people, I doubt they're just eating potatoes, man. They're probably eating each other.
I'm sure there's plenty of Irish cannibal clans through the history. You know what
Yeah.
is wild to me as well, actually, and I've just been thinking about this more and more in doing a little bit of research.
Hmm.
The fact that obviously he wrote and directed the original, and then
Yeah.
he considered the remake after seeing how successful the likes of Texas Chainsaw was in
Yeah.
2003, I
Yeah.
think it was. The likes of Amityville Horror had been announced a couple of years before that. It hadn't actually come
Hmm.
out yet, but he had kind of seen this happening, and the fact that he was so like clued in that he would have the idea to want
Hmm.
to remake his own movie that at the time was considered a cult classic and
Yeah.
hand it off to somebody else and have them write a different version of like I guess the same movie, but like
Yeah.
to be able to let go of the reins and be clever enough to know, I don't need to write and direct this because I'm just going to do the same movie again. Let somebody else do their
He did that a
interpretation.
couple times, I feel like, right? Where he was just the director and they slapped his name on it, but it wasn't necessarily his vision, but he tried to adapt it into his style or whatever. Like I think like The Curse he didn't write, stuff like that, which I feel like we'll get into at some point. Because like me and you are like when I was a young kid, right? I've told you this on the show before. Like I was obsessed. I wanted to be a director when I was like 10 years old, right? No, like scripts or basic ideas for premises and stuff like that. I'd write down these cool taglines that I thought would be a cool like movie name in this book and stuff like that. And Wes Craven always like, there's always he always I don't know. It's because of Nightmare on Elm Street, but then there's all these other movies. Like I saw People Under the Stairs and I was like 14, 13, and I was like, this is good. Like weird, really weird, but like different, right? Which I feel like I don't know. I feel like that has to be a commentary and and a review if we can do it all in one and then put one on the Patreon because we want to push people to like help support the show on both sides of the world and stuff like that. Give love to your Patreon. And that movie is an easy commentary because there's so many weird stuff in that shit, like guy with the leather outfit, and even this, I feel like we could have pulled it off at some point. But rewatching this, I rewatched it with Chelsea, and she also remembers this was one of, and that's my wife for everybody. This was one of those films that, like, the one of the first horror films she watched, other than like she watched Scream and stuff like that. But this was, I feel like, a staple of like being a preteen. And then this movie came out and everyone was talking about it, and it freaked a lot of people out. There's some uncomfortable scenes in this movie for sure.
Yeah, it's it really did succeed, I think, in doing what it intended to do, and
Yeah.
it's definitely so that time period in in horror is something that like I wish we could go back to or have a glimpse of again,
Yes.
because I mean I love the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Me
Um,
too.
let me see what else came out around that time. Like around that time, there was a lot of movies that, and maybe a lot of people wouldn't agree, but like I love
Yeah.
like things like House of Wax, that
Me
came out in
too.
2005. I love that. This movie came out. I love this movie. The Hitcher was remade in 2005, I think, or 2006, 2007. Sorry, love that. Um,
I know it's funny. I don't know if I've ever seen that movie, or if I
oh,
have,
Sean
it's been a
Bean,
long time.
dude, that movie
Yeah.
is. I love road movies, so like the whole idea of like, as
Wrong Turn came out at
yeah,
this time.
yeah,
Yeah.
like there was a lot of good movies there,
Ginger
and
Snaps is like a kind of around the same time.
I feel
Devil's
like
Rejects was 2005.
what else
So
have we
many.
got? Surely some more.
Land of the Dead. Actually, I love that. Wrong Turn is like Wrong Turn. Always like that. I still kind of like that movie. I haven't seen it in a
I love it.
while, but it was one that I remember enjoying as a kid. Last House on the Left, which is not terrible, but like I don't like those those movies.
Yeah,
I just watched 1408 recently, and that was early 2000s, 2007. And I loved it as a kid, but it is a little dry. But the whole premise and idea of the movie freaks me out.
yeah,
The What
yeah.
Lies Beneath. That's so funny. I was gonna watch that recently because some of the like I don't know it. What I think would be worth it too eventually. I think I've seen it once in my life. It's been a very long time. Is the Midnight Meat Train? Because
Oh,
that's supposed to be has
dude,
some.
I love
It
that
has
movie.
real. It's supposed to be has connected some real conspiracy stuff.
That movie is so good.
American Psycho. Okay, there's going through these lists is like, wow, I want to cover this, cover that, because like American Psycho, dude, those early 2000s, like just pushing the envelope on certain movies. That should is one of my like greatest of all times, American Psycho, because it truly shows that good looking but psychopathic man. It's Jennifer's Body, Trick or Treat. There's a bunch of good ones. I love Dawn of the Dead, Dead Silence, which we're definitely getting into very soon. It might be after this one because that's one of my
Hmm.
favorites of all time.
You
Um,
you mentioned taglines a couple of minutes ago, so I'm going to
yeah,
give you
yeah.
the
Okay,
taglines for this one, and
it
let's
better
see
be good.
which one wins. So we have life is shorter than you think.
That's it.
Bit generic.
Yeah,
They're watching.
yeah,
They will be the last thing you ever see. Where
yeah.
the road ends, the hunt begins.
That one's okay.
Evil breeds.
That's it. That's just gross though. I don't like that one.
And then the final one is the lucky ones die first.
Kind of like that, but I
Yeah,
definitely
that's
like
probably
the
my
road
favorite.
ends where the hunt begins or whatever. I don't know how we want to go forward with this. I have my thoughts written out, so I don't know if we want to discuss the film and then go forward throughout the film as we kind of discuss this stuff because it, it's just like even the beginning, right? I put down like the dun dun dun, like the guitar sound always got me when I was a kid. Like that's something I took from this film, and then the idea I put the creepy feel at the beginning of all the footage of the bombs being dropped
Hmm.
is something that was like definitely stuck in my memory. And then all like the deformed babies and stuff like that. What my conspiracy theory was
What?
that we don't actually have nuclear bombs. There's is people that really believe that we don't actually have nuclear bombs in the way they're claiming they do. And this has been taken from different theories, and I'm not going to bring up all the theories or anything like that, but it's the idea that a lot of those, those nuclear test footage that they've shown us, or it's like blowing up and trees are whisked away. That's like people claiming that's just model homes, like on a small scale.
I mean, it
Because
could very well be.
dude, there was a Joe Rogan episode. I can't remember the guy's name, and they were showing the footage, and he was like, "Look at this footage." He was like, "The car is there, and then the bomb drops, and the car, this little car appears, and it looks like a toy car." And he was like, "A lot of people think that the footage is actually not, it's not actually." Full scale because he's even like, how would they protect the camera? And they're like, oh, they're behind a bunker. But he was like, the way that filmed it and the cameras that they would have used would have to be fairly close, or you would see nothing. Like it wouldn't, it would be so grainy. You wouldn't be able to, if you were that far away in some sort of bunker. Obviously, they could have technology further along than what we thought at the time. But there is a part of me that thinks, hey, they probably do have it. But there is a weird thing of like maybe they never achieved it or they were stopped in some way to not be able to create this type of technology. But then it throws to the wind the whole conspiracy about like aliens started to show up more and more once the nuclear bomb was tested. Now I've become death, the destroyer of worlds. And then they realized that like, oh, we have like nuclear power, so we need to like stop them from using it. And that could also be a theory too. But the footage, I've looked at it, it is weird because it looks fake. It looks like a model like Sid Town or whatever.
It's this is the thing about conspiracies. Like I go down rabbit holes and then I don't know what to believe anymore, and then I feel like that the conspiracy is a conspiracy to throw me off the
Yeah,
real conspiracy.
100%.
Um, I didn't actually know that this movie got a decent amount of flack for so that opening scene you're talking about, and all those
Yeah.
flashes of deformed children and stuff. They're actual like that wasn't created for the movie. They took actual images from the aftermath of when they
Chernobyl.
used no when they used Agent Orange during the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's what that now I think they were trying to push it that it was like a mixture of like results from like Chernobyl or different things like that, but apparently that's where those actual images were taken from, and I didn't realize. And even still, I think on YouTube there's a couple of like pretty like in-depth deep dives, and all of them shit on the fact that a they used those images, and
Yeah.
b that they're trying to make I don't I really think this is a stretch, but to make out that people with deformities are like grotesque and horrible and violent. I was like, not really though. It's a horror movie like about
Yeah.
like inbred mutant people. So it's not like, but because a lot of apparently a lot of the, and we'll get into some of them, a lot of the characters actually have like the way they look are like loosely based off of real deformities.
Yeah, yeah, but that happens, and they use the deformed people in circus acts because they were strange and grotesque to people, and it always was the result of mostly some sort of government experiment, a parent drinking or doing drugs, something like that, like more or less, or some medical experiments that big pharma loves to put out there. But like this, that idea is it's true that that does happen, and it could be avoided at most times. Like, you know who Ari the Rugged Man is, the rapper.
Yeah, vaguely.
Yeah, you should get into. He's pretty. He's one of the, he's the legendary Ari the Rugged Man, and he started off rapping, and he would rap like he was retarded. So I was like, how do I soften this? But like I said, it's like a mentally challenged kid because his father was a Green Beret in Vietnam and got exposed to Agent Orange because they were like not just exposing the Vietnamese people to this, especially the in it like 80% of people nowadays. Before it was lower numbers, but like during that time, it was like 60% of people were in war that were killed were civilians. Now, since 2000 and ongoing to the recent conflict, it's 80% of people that are casualties in war are actually civilians, innocent people, right? So, like, he got exposed to it. And then I think Ari the Rugged Man was already born before his dad went over there or just after. And he was the only one that didn't really have any problems. And then, so when he first started rapping, he would act like his brothers and sisters because his dad, well, his all his brothers and sisters were like mentally handicapped and challenged and really bad deformities because his dad was exposed to Agent Orange, and it changed his life forever, right? His sister only lived till she was like 20 or something like that, and there's real repercussions for experimenting on the population or during warfare or any of that stuff, and they bring it back home, and it's not like they gave his dad or any of these people or veterans really anything. They let them die on the streets. It's like, so the real reality of war and what people are fighting for, quotations.
Can you give us a guesstimate on what you think the budget versus the box office was for this?
Has to be
So,
pretty decent.
so we'll start with budget first. Where do you think? It's sitting.
Oh, man, that's hard because that could be like anywhere. Trying to think of basically what we've done. We've talked about. Um, I might be overshooting this. 2 million,
Way off.
less or more?
More.
What? 10 million,
More.
20 million,
Less.
18,
Less.
16,
Less.
12, 12,
More.
13,
More. It's 15.
14.
15
That's
million.
pretty good. I really went low because I was like, hey, a couple million could probably create this. But then I realized you didn't take in fact like cameras and all that other stuff that actually really cost the most.
And they
And
shot
then
a
actors budget.
majority of this was shot in Morocco as well. So
Oh, weird. Yeah, that would have cost money. Yeah,
because
I tried to shoot on the low end, but I'm like, realistically, Halloween was made for what, like 1 million? It wasn't that much. So this, yeah, it could be more. That's pretty good. And then so what it
so
made,
box office,
I
yeah.
made 3 times the amount.
So what would that put it at? 50. So what, like 45?
Yeah, something like that. 50.
No, it made 70 million.
That's pretty good.
It's pretty decent. I feel like in 2006, that was probably pretty good.
I said that recently. I was like, I just want to go back to that time, Aaron. And my wife's like, but no, I like living with you. I was like kidding around, but I was like, no, I mean like that time era of just like, just like late 90s, early 2000s. Other than the fucking, the 9/11 is one thing, but I'm not American, so it didn't affect me as much. But it was affected us, but not in the same way as America. But like really, like I have so many good memories of growing up as a kid in the 90s and early 2000s and then I couldn't imagine what it'd be like growing up now, man. It's so
Yeah,
different.
terrible.
Uh, and there were so many like good movies and like just the idea of like hanging out. I didn't have a cell phone until I was like 16.
That's what
So
I'm
like,
saying. Everything seemed way more wholesome. And I know, like, you could probably make the argument that everybody says, oh, back in my day was the best time. But I genuinely feel like that to be, a kid coming into a teenager in that kind of era was like, like you said, no cell phones. Like, I remember, like, my kid doesn't even have the concept of, like, when I say to him, he's like, oh, what if you wanted to play with somebody? And I was
call them
like,
on the
well,
telephone.
I was like, we didn't go online. I was like, there was no such thing as like going online on PlayStation, so that didn't
Yeah,
work. And then I was like, I would call to their front door, and he was like, to do
yeah.
what? And I was like, well, we didn't have like shit tons of consoles and like online
No, you
gaming,
knock
so
on the door, be like, "Hey, you around? Is Bobby around?"
yeah. And there was times like I would walk for 20, 30 minutes to somebody's house only to knock the door
100%.
and they'd be like, oh no, he's not in. I'm
Yeah,
like,
like
ah, cool,
yeah, I'll
cool.
walk. And even like when MSN first started popping off, you could be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And your friend might not respond for like 4 hours, and you'd be like, "Okay, well, I'm already doing something else now." So it's
Yeah,
fun.
it's like a week later.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's just funny because I've been listening to a lot of my emo music. Stuff I've rediscovered. Like there's this band called Drop Dead Gorgeous, and they're
Hmm.
very like hardcore, like just like
I really
screaming.
want you to show up on the show soon, just completely unannounced with an emo fringe again.
I listen to me. I want to do that. That has to be an episode, but I want us to both dress up and not tell each other like I'll get the wig from Amazon. I'll do what I need to do, but it's got to be centered around some sort of episode. I'm gonna figure out what there's got to be an episode we can do to be able to do this. But for all the fans and stuff like that, we have a plan to do a Patreon episode. I found a bunch of pictures when I was like younger to like when I like got rid of my emo haircut and it looks like this stupid bowl haircut. I'm like, man, I was going into grade 9 looking like this and it's just ridiculous, right? So, and it'll show you like how kind of we grew up
Mine
in
are
this.
so bad.
That's
Mine are
so
so
funny.
fucking
So
bad.
I also have like I don't know how you want to bring it in, but you think about the opening scene. They're going on vacation. The ideas are what they're supposed to be going to California, I think,
Yeah, I
something
think
like that.
they're going from Ohio to
Yeah,
California in the RV, and obviously Doug, who is like I guess the stepson or whatever.
yeah. He does not like it.
Yeah, you can tell he's just like, why couldn't we just fly like normal people? But it's obviously Big Bob, played by
Yeah,
Ted
Big Bob.
Levine, who's like the dad. it was obviously his idea to do this like road trip RV thing. You can tell as well, like that you can kind of tell, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but like it's that kind of old school family unit where like the dad comes up with the idea and the family just kind of have to go along with it.
Has to go along with it.
Yeah.
Oh, he was in the Silence of the Lambs. Flubber, I love that
Yeah,
movie.
he's. Do you not know who he is in Silence of the Lambs? It's fucking with his ding
Oh,
dong
it
tucked
is
in.
Goodbye Horses. Is that who he plays?
The
He
guy with
plays
his ding dong
Buffalo
tucked in.
Bill.
Yeah,
Hey, Buffalo Bill.
and he does the
That's
voice. I
crazy.
think in
He's a
uh
pretty big actor. He's in a ton of stuff.
yeah, he. I think he done the voice as well in Roadkill or
Evolution.
Joyride or whatever it's called.
Yeah, dude, I
Uh,
haven't seen Evolution in a long time, man.
Remember
That's
that
so funny.
Paul Walker movie,
Yeah.
Roadkill or Joyride or whatever? And he's like,
Oh yeah, Joy. Yeah, yeah,
"You
Joyride.
there, Candy Cane?"
That's oh yeah, that's him. He's got the voice for it.
Yeah.
I know who I like in this movie too, Dan Bird. I think it's just because he was those early 2000s. Like he's in a Cinderella story, and I was like, I'm not gonna lie, as a kid, I told you I was obsessed with Hilary Duff. I loved her. Easy A stuff like that, where I can like remember liking his like character. He was kind of funny, like nerdy kind of dude. I love his character in this movie. There's a lot of characters that were well grounded. Doug's character is that's one of my favorite parts in the entire film. Which when we get into it, that fucking arc, dude.
So I remember before, like I've always loved this film since the first time I ever seen it. But um, I don't know. I feel like in my head I was always like, ugh, Doug. Doug was like the really annoying, like
Yeah,
fucking dickheady kind of guy. But then from just rewatching it again last night, even like the scene where Bobby and Doug are in the RV thing. I can't remember
yeah.
exactly where it is. It's right at the start. I think it's before
And
they've
he like
even
smokes a
crashed or anything.
cigarette or whatever.
Yeah, and he's like smoking the cigarette, and he's like, "Hey, what does he say to him again?" He's like, "Dude, Brenda'll kill you if she finds out," or something like that. He's like, "Fuck your sister," and he's like,
Yeah,
"Big Bob's gonna be angry if he finds out you're smoking in his RV," and he's like, "Fuck Big Bob too." And you can kind of tell there's like a bit
yeah.
of like something there, like,
Combativeness. And he would, yeah, and he could be kind of like pushing it. The thing is, realistically though, when I was watching that scene, I was like, you would walk into there as soon as you parked or
oh yeah,
whatever, and it would stink.
so
Like weed
bad.
is one thing. If you had an hour to like let it go or whatever, weed would be easily you could get rid of the smell of it. But cigarettes, that shit sticks, man. It's fine because once they get to like the beginning of it, you think about it, how we break it down is then they go to the creepy gas station, which is such a trope in a lot of these movies where they're on vacation or they're driving specifically, right? It made me think of the remake of Friday the 13th, which I think is definitely a worth talking about once we do that deep dive because I think the fans will really like that. Is this idea, right? That there's always this creepy gas station, especially the attendant that, and it's in so many movies of like just pulling over and you don't know where you are, but there's this guy like that's a hick that he's probably like his mother is probably his like grandma and his dad is his uncle. Yeah,
Yeah, he's and it kind of this plays again into like the Doug character arc I've noticed because like you mentioned there's that like sense of maybe some sort of combativeness in him and uh Bobby references something about, oh, my sister had cut your balls off or something, and Doug was like, oh,
Mhm.
she done that a long time ago. And you can tell it's kind of like
Yeah,
that thing where he probably has it in him, but like I
yeah,
don't know, like family life or trying to be like the good guy, like the perfect husband has kind of like made him act a certain way. And even when they get out of the gas station and he asked the the guy there, he's like, "Have you got a phone or something like that?" And your man's just like, "Nah." Like he just completely dismisses him as like, "You're not even a man. You're just like a
yeah,
fucking,
yeah.
you know, I'm not even listening."
And that's why his character arc is so good. And I really do think that it's played in the throughout the movie, and like the starting's kind of fun and stuff like that. And I even like the idea to me of being stuck in a desert, and specifically because I'm not around that. even in Canada, the worst thing, right? If you're not gonna get stuck. There's no there's not really, there's not a desert in Canada, as far as I know. Someone's probably like, well, there is in Manitoba or something like that, some small one or whatever. But realistically, I don't think that would happen because it's impossible. Because the further you go north, that's why I laugh and people are like, well, Canada can house all these people, da da da. We're like the biggest country. All 30% or whatever the number is actually livable, because if you live within like the northwest territories or where the Inuits live, it's like impossible to survive. So like, and it's realistically, we're not as big as people think it is when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to livable area. But I've never, to be honest, I've never, as far as I can know, I've been to BC, and there's kind of places like that, but I've never really been to a desert, a full on like desert. And the idea of being stuck up there, you can survive in the winter if you had the means to, because you can still you can drink snow if you really need to survive. There's ways to do it. You just need to keep yourself warm with a fire if you had the access to that, right? Whatever. But like being in a barren desert, where if as soon as you run out of anything, there's not much around to help you survive.
Yeah,
Really.
because all you've got is like fucking dust and sand and rocks. It's like, what can I do with any of that?
Cactus milk would be like the only thing maybe that can help you survive.
Even like you mentioned the gas station, and they so um apparently Craven and stuff originally wanted to shoot this in the same locations they shot the original.
That's
And
kind of cool though if
when
they
they
would have
went
done that.
and yeah, when they went and scouted the area, like there had been like condos and everything built. So he's like,
Oh,
okay,
weird.
scrap that. And they had issues, and the director Alexander, he had suggested Morocco a few times, and they were like,
Yeah.
they're just like too weary about like terrorist issues and getting people over there and back, and just
Yeah.
issues in general. So I think they were kind of against it. But he insisted, and eventually, when they couldn't find anywhere else, they decided to go with it. It was the area. I have it down here somewhere. The area is so they were originally going to use the original location of Victorville, California, and then eventually settled for Morocco in an area known as the Gateway to the Sahara. That gas station was built on location there in the middle of nowhere. And apparently it was that authentic that like people would be traveling across the desert and would pull in and try and like get gas or
Oh,
whatever or
weird.
get stuff. Yeah. They had built everything, and that's actually still been, I'm not sure if I have the image here. Um
Oh, cool.
that's been left.
Gas Haven.
That yeah, and that's a do you get to play on words? Gas Haven, Wes Craven.
Oh, that's so funny. That's cool.
Yeah. But yeah, that was just left there. I think that's still there today.
Weird. Okay.
I want to say there we go, look. It was just completely left.
Oh, weird. Trippy, man. It'd be so cool to like, I don't know, to like go there, like
I know,
play
yeah.
a Ouija board there. I don't know, something like freaky. I don't know if you catch anything. Uh, what about the Nuke Town?
Oh, I love that.
Was that placed there, or did they build all that?
So here was something I was really disappointed. That Nuketown, they only built one like little section of like a street, and then
Yeah.
I didn't realize the amount of over 30%. I think of the shots in this movie are CG.
Weird.
So you know that scene where Doug comes up over the horizon and he looks down into that big crater,
Yeah, yeah.
like before anything goes too crazy. That's all CG.
Wow, that's cool.
I know, yeah, I didn't
I
realize.
I even like wrote, like I said, like how like the idea of people watching you but you didn't know is kind of creepy, and it's like goggle, goggle, whatever. Like it's just scary. Like they did all this movie kind of freaked me out, and I said, because like at the beginning you're kind of lured into this idea that there is people watching, and you don't really, the audience knows, but the family doesn't know that there is people out there. They're out having a good time, in a lot of these movies, because they're trying to play on the real aspect of how realistic that could be, is people not really knowing when things can hit the fan, right? The idea of, you go back, which a lot of people were like interested by, is our strange vacations episode, is this idea you're supposed to be out having, a good time with your family, and then you could have something could happen. It's something so easy of just falling over the boat drunk. Any stuff like that could just change your whole day. And so it's kind of interesting how they don't realize it until the dog. I hate that part though because I love dogs. Is when he goes to find Beauty, and then which I the whole that whole the thing of the dog getting revenge, which we'll talk about in a bit, is like my one of my favorite things. So good. But the dog's cut in half, and then you see like Ruby later, and I wrote down like I was creeped out by that guy sitting on the ledge eating the dog leg, which he ends up getting it. So I'm glad that he does because Beast seeks his revenge for killing his sister, obviously the dog. But like him going like, and then it pans up to see him like sitting there, always freaked me out.
Yeah, and I love how. So this is one of the few movies I think where you've got these weird deformed mutants that actually feel
Yeah.
like they have some sort of character to them, in the sense of like
Yes.
they do kind of have their own unique mannerisms, and like even is it Pluto? He's the big guy, right? That kind of looks like Sloth from
Yeah.
the Goonies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Even he has like facial expressions, which is weird. Kind of hard
Oh
to
yeah.
explain without having seen it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like he has facial expressions that like, when they attack the trailer, he kind of like he's like smiling and laughing, kind of like a baby when the baby is like cooing and shit.
Yeah.
And then he goes from that to
I
like angry and sad. It's just like creepy, dude.
It is, and it's funny because it does definitely play on that sloth aspect because he's like,
Yeah, yeah.
like like that laugh and he's like loving this shit. There is definitely some characters in this movie, but it is funny because like the one thing that I always I liked about this film, obviously being probably very into punk and rock and metal and stuff, is as soon as like the night hits, it's like doom, 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 and that's when stuff starts hitting the fan because once you're sheltered away, and it is crazy because everything during the day looks the same at night, but it's that energy of just like darkness. And if you didn't
Yeah.
have the electricity or some sort of fire, it's pitch black. You can't see, right?
Something
Other than night
I
stars.
kind of didn't realize, I don't think as much till I really like tried to analyze the movie, was how like
Yeah.
tense and eerie and scary they were able to make scenes that were shot in like really really bright, like washed out
Oh yeah. I
areas.
agree. I agree. It's pretty crazy because the whole feel of it did freak me out when I was like watching it, right? And the character specifically, I hate the cleft lip guy. But what I was gonna bring up too, is the idea of when the dad finds the gas station and then his realization of what is happening is such a good like it's a staple within the film of him being like he's reading the newspapers on the wall and then he's like you son of a bitch or whatever he says and he starts to realize that that gas station attendant lured them in and it was used because even watching it we are like she's like well why is he wanting to kill himself I was like because he's had like enough right like when he realizes that he's in the outhouse and he's like I tried my best or whatever and then he's done with it because he finally after all this time feels the guilt of the situation but that scene is pretty good of the dad's realization of what is actually happening.
And then to for them to show him as such this big like boisterous character,
Yeah.
ex detective, has everything under control, he's like the family man, the head of the family, and to see
Yeah.
him kind of go into that panic. And then it's so jarring, like that the dude blows his fuck,
Daddy.
yeah, like when he blows his fucking head
Daddy. I
off
hate that.
with the
Man.
shotgun.
That's
Uh,
crazy, dude. I remember watching that as a kid when it's just like boom. And like what a scene, dude. And they
and
show like it.
yeah, that's the thing I like, and I think that's a testament to KMB effects studio. Like they've a lot of these films that we talk about absolutely loving. KMB
Yeah.
are the ones who done all the effects on them, and it's actually interesting in this one that the co-owner of KMB is on screen right now in the bottom right.
The
He
guy.
he also had a cameo as that character called Cyst or whatever it is, the guy with the fucking head neck
Oh,
brace
the
thing.
cephalite. Oh no, I thought okay. Oh yeah, on the right. Yeah, that's funny. Really?
Yeah, that's Greg Nicotero.
That's guy's good. That's a good character though too.
Yeah,
The
it's
idea of
freaky
like your
looking.
neck being all messed up and stuff, so you have to like probably keep it propped up in that way. Um, it is crazy because we've told like I've said that we should definitely do an episode on special effects, especially practical effects, and kind of praise. I love practical effects, man. I'm not a huge fan of CGI. I'm not like I'm not a, I love Star Wars. I'm not a huge fan of the prequels because of how over exhausted the CGI was.
Yeah,
There's
yeah,
something about practical effects, and it may not look as real. Sure, even with the modern day CGI, but then it's like kind of funny because it seems like it's gotten worse in some regard in some aspects in some movies. But practical effects, I feel like you can kind of, I don't know, there's something like about it. Like even the practical effects they have in this film is amazing, and they do look very real, in my
yeah. And
opinion.
and I had there's a making of documentary at
That
the
axe in the head picture on
no,
everyone
yeah.
go watch the YouTube. Oh,
the there's a making of, like, I think it's like 45 minutes long maybe on YouTube.
yeah,
And the full thing is on there, and like I watched it the other day, and I like their style for this, where they were like, we weren't opposed to using CG, but it was only going to be
yeah,
used to complement practical effects or to clean up something in post. It wasn't going to be the main focus.
yeah.
It was only used to just complement all the practical stuff.
And then like the idea of CGI putting people out of work that actually have spent their lives learning how to, do these practical effects that look really well done. I'd rather have that, man. I'm sick of CGI. I'm sick of everything being fake and AI and everything else. I'd rather be like wholesome, bloody ass, real blood, just coming out of the head. And I don't
And
know. There's like, I
and
miss that
also,
stuff.
I'm not sure, and there's a name on this, but I don't care, like when people say, "Oh, it's getting more and more realistic looking." To me, I can clearly tell when something is
Me
CG,
too. Yeah,
like from a
me too.
mile away, and it's like really jarring to me. Like if I'm at the movies and I'm watching something and something comes on screen as CG,
Yeah.
instantly I'm like, I feel like my eyes are locked on to the fact that that's not part of the scene.
Yeah, 100%. And as much as even like I love the new Avatar. It was the same story, but it looked beautiful, and I watched it on a little mushrooms and stoned, right? And the story got to me because it's all about like the men being fighting for their women and stuff like that, right? It wasn't as woke as they could have created it to be, but like still, as much as it looked beautiful, it's I don't know. There's something about it. You can just tell it's fake. It's not real. It's not real in the way that it could be, as much as it's so well done. It didn't even look that great for how far we should have came with technology at this point.
Yeah, and that's my thing, and I would much rather just be given something practical.
Yeah, and even so, I want to talk about this. Maybe bring us back on scene. Is by far the most disturbing aspect of this film is the idea of the big R word.
Yep.
And listen to me, I didn't realize how far they pushed it as a kid because I probably was with my friends, be like, oh, like grabbing each other and stuff, and like being like, ew, right, or like with a chick and just like closing her eyes or whatever. Um, but what always got me, and I wrote this down because it's funny because rewatching these films, I'm able to like relive somewhat of my memory as when I first watched them, and the things that I can get brought up in my head, I write down. And I was like drinking scotch and stuff like that, watching them. It was fun. Like I had a bunch of glasses of scotch while we sat down. I smoked my big vaporizer that I have, and it was just like a nice kind of chill vibe. But that idea of him, Pluto breathing, going over her, and then you don't really realize what's going on. This whole chaos ensues, of the boys realizing that scene's crazy too, the dad being lit on fire, and then
That
just
whole trailer
chaos.
attack is like probably one of the most chaotically frightening scenes that I can remember from a movie like that. The
Yeah,
fact that, like,
they distract everything.
yeah, and it's like, they're out there trying to fucking put him out, and he's like screaming in pain. They're all screaming, don't know what's going on. Because it would be like,
Yeah,
to think about it, right? From their perspective, they've gone from having some sort of a blowout on the tires to,
yeah,
their husband slash dad slash stepdad being tied to a stake and on fire. in the middle of the desert, so you're gonna be like, "What the fuck?" And then the realization when you hear the screaming from the trailer, and it's like, "Oh God, what is going
Is
on?"
this the reverse Ku Klux Klan? There's like
It's
burn
just
the
like,
white people.
what the
It's
fuck?
wild because how fast that shit just like accelerates and then goes to this like chaos. It's pure chaos, right? And then the women being in the trailer and then the men not noticing. And what I found, and I wrote this down too throughout the film, is they always try to lure the males away from the females. And to me, it is. I think that that shows like the that think about this. There's predators out there, right? I can't remember. I started watching something, and it was like he was a not a cop or like a FBI, some sort of like agent that's like studied this stuff or private detective type of guy, and he said that when a predator is looking to you know do something to someone of a minor young person, right, a kid, they will look at the dad, and if the dad is some strong, intimidating dude, they're less likely to actually attack. Or lure in said child or young person, right? So it shows that there is like, as much as people want to blur these lines of what men and women are, there is a big difference. And if you are strong enough to be able to be capable of fighting, like you have jujitsu under your belt, I actually want to take a defense class. And like I've fought my whole life, right? Try to fight kids as a kid, and I got jumped by 5 kids when I was like 15, 14 because they didn't like that I called a friend a goof. It's funny because we were just talking about this, and this idea of like that you got to learn to stand your ground, especially to protect the ones you love, especially as a man. And then they lure them away, right? A whole film is them luring away Bobby and stuff the entire time. They keep luring him away, and so the males are not there to protect. And that scene of like them coming into the trailer, dude.
And I think it really sets the tone for how well they've adapted to their location now. The fact that we
Yeah, yeah,
see, like for those opening couple of scenes, Big Bob is established as just that. It's like that Big Bob character.
yeah,
He has the big fucking revolver. He's the ex detective. He knows how
yeah,
to
yeah,
solve
yeah.
shit. And the fact that he's the first one to get fucked up and lit on fire, I think, kind of
Mhm.
goes to show the audience, oh, Big Bob is dead. So, like, this is all bets are off now. This is going to get
100%
insane.
because they took out the strongest player, technically, right? You want to think about it that way, is the strongest player. If you think of any competition show, if you're smart, I watch the challenge and stuff all the time. You want to take out the top person. If you should get into the challenge. I've been watching it since I was a young kid, and it's on like Prime and stuff like that. It's great because it shows the idea of you should want to take out the strongest person. A lot of times people like politic, but realistically, if you're in like some sort of warfare or something, you want to take out the big dude, big dog first
Yeah,
in a
because
strategic
then,
way.
like, nobody had, like, because you could see from that point then, because several times actually in the lead up to this, um,
Yeah.
they ask, like, okay, Big Bob, what are we doing here? Or what's the plan? And you can see instantly when they realize that he's been burnt at the stake, everybody just fucking loses their mind. Now, obviously, I know that that's
Mhm.
because there's somebody on fire, but like, I think that there's like maybe a metaphor behind that as well, in the sense of like now nobody has any guide or direction or leadership.
Yeah, yeah.
So everybody's just fucking,
100%.
everything seems to be going
And
everywhere.
and that's when they pan to this whole thing of like him being like oh breathing over her and like I didn't realize watching it how far they do push that, and there's so many moments in this film where you're like whoa, like I didn't expect it to go that direction. And Pluto being like the big dumb guy. That is the whole premise. He is the big dumb R word, right? Like, I don't mean to offend people. I don't use it in the same. I use that as a term of like you're like dumber than dumb. Like this is, and then you see him coming in. He's like breathing over her, and I didn't realize the cleft lip guy. I don't know. I can't remember his name.
Lizard.
Oh yeah, lizard. Ew. Yeah, yeah. And him actually, he full blown like he rapes Brenda. And I didn't realize that when I was a kid. I don't think as much as they kind of play on it, but when he like smells his fingers, it's definitely meant to gross out the audience. And actually, Wes Craven is kind of good at that aspect of things too, is pushing the limits on those type, especially in the '80s. Like, didn't he do the Last House on the Left?
Yep. That
So
movie unsettles me as well.
I will never rewatch that unless we have to do it for a show, but it's not my jam. And then you realize when she puts her hand against the window, like she's Rose in Titanic, and it's you realize what's happening. And I didn't really think about it. I thought that maybe he just like got a little finger action in there. It's funny because on my show I'll say the most outlandish shit, but I'm like try not to do it on your show. But like he gets in there, and then you realize that he's pulling out his dingy
It
dong.
yeah, and it's so
Ooh.
gross because he's like, oh god, like from watching it again last night, I actually didn't realize like how much they imply he's given her like back shots, and
Yeah.
like just that like trusting, and the fact that he's like doing this kind of weird like moan slash like you can tell
Oh,
like that
it's
he's like
so
finished or
creepy.
whatever.
Yeah.
And like just like the look on her face, and she's like covered in blood and shit, and like the whole thing is just like, her mother has been blown across the trailer by getting shot in the stomach.
I know. That shit's wild. The whole when she comes in, she like actually tries to do something, and then that like it's crazy. Realistically, I don't know how much that would, but if you had in a small location and you were close enough with a shotgun, you could probably like someone would probably if they were light, they would launch across the room
And
just like
then
that. Like
the
it's
fact that
wild.
he grabs the other daughter then, and like he's like pointing the fucking gun at the baby's head. I'm
Yeah.
like, whoa, this movie really went for it here. This didn't like, and he's like, he starts
100%.
breastfeeding on her
It's
tits.
so oh man, it's so funny how much they push the limit on this film because I was like I told you I want you to experience Kenny versus Spetty with me, which is a Canadian prank show, like the competition show with friends, right? And they do who can take care of the baby, like a baby the longest, and they get like the animatronic babies, and the essentially they got in so much trouble because the one guy was like throwing it against a wall because he was trying to mess it up, so then he could switch out the babies later. It's very clever and then like essentially kills it in what they would test it on. And he was getting in trouble for that. And he's like, "It's a doll." We were watching the commentary because now years later they're doing commentaries for these episodes. He's like, "It's a doll." He's like, "They're giving us so much fucking issue for this," and I hung it off a bridge. It's a doll. He's like, there's kids on YouTube like doing horrendous stuff that is okay, but he was like, us doing this at the time was not cool, and it shows how much they were like, especially in this film, pushing the boundaries. And as a kid, I'm pretty sure I didn't expect Blizzard to actually shoot what's her name? Lynn in the
Lynn,
show,
yeah,
Vanessa Shaw.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
crazy.
Again,
I didn't
like,
expect that.
yeah, and it's weird, right? Because you've seen so many unexpected things. I think the standard beat for a movie, especially a horror movie, doesn't normally kind of go like, you know, quiet, and then like you'll have like something big happen, and then quiet again, and something big
Yeah,
happen, and we go through our acts. Whereas this, like, we get to that first kind of attack, let's say, and it's like boom,
yeah,
boom, 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 one after another. He's like shoots the mom, rapes the chick,
yeah.
shoots the sister in the head, is gonna shoot the baby. Like the whole thing is just like they've burnt the dad
They're gonna
alive.
take Brenda, but obviously to be bred, which is like the most disturbing thing. And like I think
Scary.
once we get into Hills of Ice 2, I love the first one. The second one I've watched maybe like 5 times, 6 times. It makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, it is
It makes
fucking
me want to
grotesque.
after doing this, like in talking about this, it makes me want to go watch it after this, just to like get into this while I can, kind of thing. Um, but it's one of these movies that almost like they did. I don't know. They made it disturbing for the sake of making it disturbing, and the idea of the most disturbing thing about some inbred family that is, living in the hills is they have to keep their lineage going. They have to. The more people you have, and you think about this. Back in the day, if you had a farm, right, you would produce a bunch of kids so they could be farm hands and help you tend to the livestock and the animals and the the wheat or whatever you're growing, corn, and you would need that back in the day. Nowadays, right, we're a totally different society, but that's what you would want. The more family and more kids you have, the more that they can help out around the farm. And then so saying my premise with this is you would need more and more people, crazy people to be able to survive.
Yeah, and it's like that thing of, I suppose every little chance they get to be able to kidnap women to breed them is
Yeah.
like they have to take it in their
Oh,
minds.
that's why I haven't seen number two in a while, and I just remember the military stuff.
I
Yeah,
didn't realize actually that there. So we were talking about like obviously pointing the gun at the baby's head, and you were mentioning
yeah,
other things, and people have gotten shit for doing things like that. And
Yeah.
if you watch the making of documentary, they talk about it. Like, yeah, we had some severe issues with pointing the gun at the baby's head, and like
Sure.
instantly, like my ears perked up, and I was like, well, of course, I would imagine that
Yeah.
that would be an issue. And he was like, no, 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 there's no issue with like anything like that. The issue was the baby would laugh and grab the gun.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we had
That's
to
not
shoot the scene like 20 times because the baby thought it was a toy and would like grab
yeah.
the thing.
What
He
you
was
mean?
like, no, no, we had no, because I was like, I was waiting for him to be like, oh, we had so many issues with like,
Yeah.
all these different laws and different this and different that, and maybe they didn't want to put it in the movie. He was like, no, that wasn't actually the hurdle. The hurdle was to try and get the kid to not grab the gun or like laugh or like play with it.
To be honest, as much as they like to like ban certain movies or whatever for certain content, at the end of the day, if it's rated R, and that's why there's movies that would have pushed the boundary further that would have been NC-17. But realistically, to me, if it's rated R, I feel like you should be able to put the most fucked up shit in the movie as long as it's fake. It's not a real body being murdered or whatever. I feel like R should be that line. NC-17 should be more if it's like a on the edge of being like a porn movie. You know, like there's a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
sex, so they can kind of like push that boundary and just be like, okay, this is not going to be shown in
Because
theaters.
I
But
think
realistically, for a horror movie or even any movie, R should be like, all right, you're able to push the boundaries on most things.
at one point, they were looking at giving this an X rating. Would I be right in saying that? Is
It's
that like the
crazy,
worst?
yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's worse than NC-17, I think.
yeah, and there was stuff like there's an unrated version of this, and I don't know how many deleted scenes are in it, but that trailer attack actually was supposed to be even more gruesome. They had the idea of, so you know the way he bites the bird's head off
Yeah.
and that whole thing. So they weren't going to use birds originally; they were going to use kittens,
Oh fuck.
and lizard was going to come in, get the kittens, two or three kittens, shove them into a blender, and you know the way he grabs the milk and he's drinking the milk.
Yeah.
He's drinking
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
milk and then he pours the milk in on top of the kittens and turns the blender on. And then him and Pluto like drink the like chunky milkshake kitten thing.
Wow.
And
I
he's
they
like
should have done
screaming and like doing.
that.
But apparently
That's
he
so
pitched it to
crazy.
Wes Craven, and Wes Craven was like, "We're not doing that."
Maybe he loves kittens.
I don't know. He
It's pushing the
it
boundary on something, but there's
it didn't
supposed to be
elaborate,
these
but it just said apparently that Wes Craven was the one that was like, "Nah, no, we're gonna leave it at just the rape and like the shooting everybody. I think we'll stick
because
with
it's
that."
already far enough. Yeah, and I feel like if you're put like the idea that they're supposed to be like complete maniacs, um, I don't know. I feel like it could have been achievable. Like the idea is you're supposed to these people are supposed to be complete psychopaths, right? So then the idea of like I did write down that I liked when the dog gets revenge on the Watcher.
Yeah,
Essentially,
yeah,
is what I
yeah,
call them. Like great scene because it like this movie. What I find progresses into more and more like vengeance, which Wes Craven is good at doing, obviously, because he at least helped produce it. Is it excels into this like okay, they've had this horrific traumatic event happen to them, and then slowly they kind of gain their revenge in different ways, and then I realized that the pickaxe like graves in through the tunnel when Doug is going down. I realized that that's the family, right? That's the family of the now the killers.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't
No,
realize that at first. And I was like, oh, because they all hid down the we hid in the mines.
yeah.
That when
You get
that
that bit
oh
of
it's,
exposition.
yeah, and know what's crazy that cephalitis guy with his big ass head or whatever. Do you remember when me and Billy did the melon heads? Like we talked about like the idea of them being a real thing.
That
And
dude down
there
in the corner.
yes,
He's fucking
and
scary. Big brain. That's what I
I
call
know is
him.
that his name, Big Brain?
Yeah.
So Goggle's still alive, right? When he's like Goggle. Oh
Goggle
no,
is who?
the Watcher guy, right? Because
Oh
I feel
yeah,
like
yeah.
even at the end, they still like there's still that like radio turns on, and it looks like somebody's watching them. Am I wrong? Isn't that how it ends?
Yeah, where it zooms back out and it looks like
Yeah.
someone's looking through binoculars.
Oh, so creepy. You know what's funny? Like even the whole premise of I love when Doug goes into the town with the bat, gets a weapon, and starts to like finally progress towards wanting revenge. And out of a lot of characters in horror movies, man, Doug gets the like living shit beat out of him.
Yeah,
He gets
and
beat up so bad, dude.
do you know what I was watching this last night, and we were just sitting there, and I was thinking, like, because obviously I have a kid, and I was like, you know what,
Yeah.
it's probably not that unbelievable to think that if you were stuck in that situation, you're like, right, everything is already fucked. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
There's all these mutant people, and now my newborn baby has been like taken by these people. I don't really have anything to lose at this point. I can't even escape if I wanted to. So let me just go and try and fucking do something.
Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking about like what I would do in this situation. I would 100% be done. My this rage and your human instinct to survive would take over, and I would just. It's happened throughout history, man. There's real stories of like mothers being able to lift a car because there's like their
Yeah,
babies
yeah.
underneath and stuff. Like it's true stories like this have happened where people's strength go beyond what our, what we can imagine the human capability is, and that's why I think that this reality is not as real as we think it is. And that if you push past this, like the idea I've always thought of, like the Matrix movie where he like bounces off the cement. I'm like, what if
Hmm.
you truly believe that in your head?
Yeah.
You really, really believe that, but at the end of the day, that fear will always take over. But he pushes past that limit of what the human body can take, because even when he like, I love this movie because the little things that they add into it, where he's like taking the baby away, and he like the weird um lesbian looking bald chick that's like, she has
Freaky.
no hair anymore, so she's like combing the hair of like the doll, and then when she appears when he saws the kid is like, because you're not expecting it at all.
I was just looking up here, right? I'm not sure if I feel like I had something down about that chick. So we have so Big Brain apparently suffers from an extreme case of hydrocephalitis and
Yes,
goiters,
that's what I was gonna say, cephalitis or whatever. Yeah.
explaining his large distended head and bloated throat. Big Mama lacks deformities entirely aside from her baldness and obesity. Cyst
That is technically a
suffers from
deformity. I'm sorry.
neurofibromatosis, which explains the
Yeah.
reddish lesions all over his body. Cyst is first seen by Doug, dragging the female corpse, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Goggle having two patch job slits in his face in place of a nose, as well as patchy pink and red skin. Lizard, a severe cleft lip and malformed jaw. Pluto has a misshapen head and face and appears to be mentally impaired. Ruby, fingers are fused together, um, while her appearance of her face suggests golden hair syndrome. I don't know what the fuck that
Good.
is. Um, and then like it just says that they all seem to suffer from like skin disorders and stuff, which may be due to the like where they are, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, and the nerve, like I don't know if it was a nuclear bomb or like some sort of nerve gas, and you were able to survive that, it would affect like your skin, probably, and the way your skin adapts to like
Yeah, for
sunlight and
sure.
stuff.
Yeah,
And it's funny because like, and then I put like waking up in the freezer always got to me. Cue the guitar, right? And then that like pure determination, dude,
mm-hmm.
of him, dun, dun, like so good. And then he's like freaking out. And the fact that he was able to like, because realistically, you would be able to if you push that hard enough. But when he lights that match and there's like the dead bodies all around him, and he pushes past that limit of what we think, humans are capable of doing, and he snaps the latch, and then it's like go time where he's like, all right, I'm gonna fight to survive, you know?
And I do definitely think that there's something like people might say, "Oh, that's far fetched and it's in a movie and blah blah blah." I don't know if you've ever watched like anything like David Blaine has done, or
Yeah, I know.
say like his appearances on Joe Rogan and stuff, and he puts that shit through his fucking arm and stuff, and he talks
Yeah,
about
yeah,
like obviously it's not a magic trick. He's actually putting it. He went to doctors and stuff, and they found out exactly where he misses all the vital things, and he
yeah, so
trained
crazy.
that. But the fact that
Yeah.
he was like, Joe's asking about pain thresholds and things like that, and he was like, no, it's there's a place you can go to if you truly want to, that like you can, when you think you're done or
So
you think you've had
wild.
enough,
Yeah. You're
which
so
is
pressed.
wild.
I'm sure that's like some sort of addiction for him too. And then you have breakfast time, and then you have like Pluto smash through the wall. Because there's so many like memorable scenes. And even when he leaves, I would have never left Big Brain alone. Like alive. And Chelsea's like, well, maybe they wanted him to suffer or whatever. And I was like, I would have killed him.
I
because
would
then he
have
gets
bashed
on
his
the
fucking head in.
yeah. I wouldn't even care. I would have been like done with all these people. I'm like, I'm gonna take away your whole bloodline. I don't care.
Yeah.
And then when the dog beast comes out and kills him, it's like satisfying. And I love the idea that they have a dog. They murder one dog, which is a huge bad thing. Like, Halloween was known for that. Like, oh, Michael Myers killed the dog. No way. And then this one where the beast is able to get revenge for Beauty being discarded and killed in the way that she was is one of my favorite parts of the film because I love dogs and the idea of the dog being like, no, fuck you. I'm
That
gonna
would
like,
also, I thought about that. Like, I have a dog, and like he's like most people's dogs, he's part of the family. And,
mm,
it's like, I was sitting there thinking about that now, and I was like, if some motherfuckers killed my dog or took my dog, took my kid, and all, I was like, I would probably be exactly the same as Doug right now. And that's not to be like,
yeah.
I'd be the hero and I'd be MacGyver and I'd fashion all these weapons and do all this stuff. But like, I think I would like probably legitimately be like psychotic.
Yeah, and it is cool. Like I actually love the scene where like Doug is seeking revenge. And I said that I wrote down the anthem that plays when Doug finally kicks some ass. When it's almost like some like and it shows like the American flag and him like shoving in his head and all that stuff. And it's like it's an anthem. If you listen to the soundtrack in the background, it is very like an uplifting, like da 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 like this very like he's kicking some ass finally, and he finally gets this revenge on these people that like killed his wife and molested his stepsister or whatever, or sister-in-law. And there's so many good, well done parts about this movie when it comes to the content of what it actually is and stuff like that. I just like I love my favorite part of the entire film is the upliftingness of when he finally gets the revenge. Well, then, like, even I wrote down like when he's going through the house and it's like, Mister, would you play with us? And he's like, in his head, he's probably thinking, oh no, there's like children here too.
Yeah, like I don't know if you were in that position, would you just go and bash their heads in as well?
I couldn't. There's no way because they don't know any better. They're just being told what they're taught, and that's the idea of still in our society, right? I'm not gonna get into that too much, but people only know what they know, right? You only know what you're taught. So if someone's teaching you some outlandish, unfactual bullshit, you grow up believing that.
Okay, but like think about this, right? God forbid, Chelsea's dead. Your kid, let's say you've just had a new kid, the kid is taken.
Yeah,
Charlie, your dog, has been like gutted. Would you not
yeah.
just go over and like boot those fucking kids' heads in?
There would be a part of me that really wanted to do something really horrible, just because of the sake of revenge and being like, well, you did this to me, I'm gonna do this to
Because
you,
it's like
kind of.
that thing I think where, and you can see it with Doug, and I think it's really well done. Actually, I didn't realize until I rewatched it last night how well done his whole character arc is, in the sense of like it would go from, because I would probably be that like scared shitbag to begin with,
Yeah,
in a way. Now, not that I would like, I wouldn't throw the women in my family in front of me as a shield or anything, but like
yeah, yeah,
I definitely wouldn't be, if something like that happened to me, straight away my instinct wouldn't be let me run outside and start like punching everybody and like trying to kill everybody.
I know.
I'd be like,
Yeah,
let's fucking hide in this thing and try and figure out how to get the fuck out of here.
I know, because like in leading to like the ending of the film, right? It's kind of cool that like Bobby and Brenda. It's funny how their names are both B. That was obviously on purpose, probably. But like how they like home alone the situation
Yeah,
to some
yeah,
extent.
yeah,
And I think that was kind of cool. And then they get scared by like the tumbleweed. But even when they explode the trailer, even like my wife was like now they've lost all their resources. And I was like, technically, that's like your last route for one guy. But then you see him shooting the bullets like they're candy and not actually focusing. One
yeah.
shot to the head killed that dude.
That
I'm
that
like, come on!
really,
I know you would have been panicking,
yeah.
but I would have like focused and then just like launched,
Even
right?
fucking,
Like
I was really shocked by when they had Big Bob's character do that after the dude blows his head off.
I know, just
And he just
yeah,
starts
yeah, so
randomly shooting. I was like, is this, did he not say at the start of this that he's like an ex detective for like all these years? And now he's just randomly
I know.
firing shots all over the place?
I said so much in movie I would panic, but the
Oh,
idea if you've had training in that, you would just be focused and calm. And then if something came at you like a video game, you think about it, you shoot it. You don't like, you know.
I would feel so much better. Not to say that I would survive, but I would feel so much better in that situation if I opened the glove box and I had that giant revolver or a pistol or something.
Yeah,
I'd be like,
I
well,
know.
I don't feel as bad now.
No, I would feel like, and then come at me because they all have like pickaxes and some weapons, but I think it's the second one where they actually kind of get a couple of guns, don't they? I have
Hmm.
to. I actually would be interested. Maybe I might watch that today. Write my thoughts out. If you eventually want to do like a quick
Oh,
episode
100%. Yeah. 100%.
on number
Absolutely.
two. But if we want to bring it close to an end, and we can get maybe a couple fun facts where we bring this to a close if you have any more. But the idea is, I wrote one of the whole arc is great. But when Doug comes over that hill with that dog and he's barely alive because he's had the shit beat out of him. And then I wrote down, Ruby! When Lizard is still like alive. And it's crazy that he lets him live. He just like kicks him and assumes he's dead instead of like, I would be like making sure one bullet to the head just in case. And then he like drops the shotgun and like, I don't know. There'd be a big part of me that would want to see them like eviscerated. Like, I want you gone from reality, right? And it's just, and then Ruby finally saves the day at the end. At the end, the chick that maybe sees the impacts of what her deformed family has done, and then she saves the day in some way, or
Yeah,
she
because
would be
like
dead.
I would even be thinking like, let's say you had no rounds left in the shotgun or something. I would
Yeah,
use the butt of that shotgun and I would
yeah.
smash his head into mincemeat.
I know, because why? Like, I feel like he'd be such a rage.
A-
Um,
And like I think it's something that I didn't actually really hone in on until yesterday was so like Pluto. If you look up anything for this movie, right, Pluto's face
yeah,
is shown probably more than anybody because I
yeah,
think
yeah.
he's such a
I agree.
big hulking character. But if you think about it, right, Lizard is actually the real scumbag of the story
Yeah, he is.
because
He's this. I
he kills the mother, he kills the sister, he rapes the other sister. He's
yeah,
the one that's like telling them to take the baby. He tells the
yeah,
chick, I'll be back for you. He's trying to fucking kill the little Ruby girl. So like he's kind
yeah.
of like the dirtbag.
And that's why it makes you kind of want to watch the second one. And I feel like it will intrigue the fans a little bit too, because like I haven't seen it a bit, but the idea that there's definitely got to be more of them. Because like, would it just be this family? We only saw one female, like like there really. It is kind of we only see a couple of characters. We don't see
Yeah.
maybe who would be running the show, the big bad dad or something like that. And it doesn't make me. Eventually, I think it would uh, would be justified to maybe do the original Hills Have Eyes, but in a
Hmm.
deep dive because is there not a second one of the original
Yeah,
too?
there is.
So and I think I've only seen them like once or twice. Like, and I
It's
really
funny.
do like the first one.
It's funny you say that because I the last thing I have written down on the notes were even though we only see several mutants throughout the entire film, the level of violence is crazy and makes the audience
Yeah,
wonder how many more of these creatures are hiding out in the hills or mines. Maybe we haven't seen the worst of this clan yet.
100%. Because if they were breeding, you think there'd be a lot more than what we see. These people look like when he was like, we went into the mines and we hid, and your people drop bombs, boom, boom, which will always be a memory in my head. But like realistically, the people that we see seem like the people that have survived the bombs being dropped. So where's all the people that they bred, even teenagers and stuff like that? Interestingly enough,
And like,
and it's funny because I feel like they could redo this in a way where they change the name a bit. The Hills Have Eyes, something, right? Like,
yeah,
don't
yeah.
name it one, two, or three, or anything like that. Just like have it where it's like a tagline name with the Hills Have Eyes.
Because then I was thinking, okay,
They couldn't redo this now.
I know the idea of the gas station dude is like, sending people down that road or whatever,
Yeah,
that whole thing. But I was thinking to myself then, I was like, realistically though, how many people are going to come by here? So what happens if there's like no people come by for months on end? But then I was like, you know what? It's a really sick thought. Um, like they're probably breeding like those kids when they get old enough and stuff.
yeah,
And just like, because I would imagine the levels of like inbreeding there is like severe.
yeah. And shout out to my show, but it's Strange Brew because like you need to be around. We'll do our own episode, but I think at some point, me, you, and Billy should either do the Whitaker family or the Fugate family. We can maybe me and you do one of those individually, just us. But there's got to be one episode because that we and Billy and Anton did like the Goler clan, and that got a lot of attention. Like people were like, because it was also funny because we are trying to like just you got to be kind of joking a little bit. And there was actually so much like documented footage of these Canadian people that just inbreeded in this small place in Nova Scotia, right? And I
Hmm.
do think that talking about the real aspects of some of these, uh, uh, you know, films and how real this does exist out in the real world, maybe not to the extent of violence, but inbreeding and weird stuff going on. It's so bizarre. No, I just realized too. I didn't know that Doug was in X-Men 2. I love that movie, and he's Pyro. And I
Oh
love
wow, I didn't
Pyro's
even
character
realize
for the
that.
little bit of what he plays. Remember, he always flicks the lighter. So I
Uh-huh.
saw this as a kid because I was like 12. I remember finding an old Zippo lighter in the playground, which is so weird, and then like just light it, pretending to light it because of that film. Because I was like, cool.
You thought you were
I didn't
Pyro.
realize that he was in that. That's actually kind of funny. Pyro man, great character for how much he's on screen.
And I think
So
it really finishes his character arc when he gets reunited with Bobby and Brenda or whatever.
yeah, he's which means that he must like. I'm sure people want to talk to him about this film too.
Yeah, I would imagine so. He Yeah, just for me, like I think I've got, if it's even possible, um an even bigger appreciation for how like well done this movie is and how clever it is.
Yeah, me too. And I said this is probably in my top 20 to even top 15 favorite horror movies
Yeah,
for what it does to the audience. And like I said, the hero arc that is done throughout all films, the hero's journey is very prominent in this one. Some films do evade from that, but the majority of movies do depend on the hero arc, and it's great. And I think like to be honest, like I don't know, I'll be um I'll give the I'll give this 8 stinky fingers out of 10.
yeah, I would give it probably
Maybe
8,
an 8.5.
8.5. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, for
it's great.
sure.
And the
Yeah,
way
it is.
it's doing what it's supposed to do.
And it's right. So for as unsettling and like horrible some of it is, it's actually a really fun ride as well. It is like a roller
Yeah,
coaster of a movie.
100%.
You
I
know, that
agree.
that to me is like the movie experience is something like that. That it's just like
It's
I
supposed to be.
did not expect. And then, like I said, the beats in the movie weren't your standard procedure. It was
No.
like we got to the trailer attack, and like 10 serious things happened one after another.
And it keeps your attention and it's not slow. And I just find that movies nowadays try too hard. And I don't know, it's just disappointing. And then watching stuff like this where I'm like, this does exactly what it's meant to do.
Yeah,
And
I'm
now I bet
actually.
you couldn't do this nowadays. You couldn't
No,
do
you
this now.
couldn't. There's no. I don't even think this would get past like the pitch stage,
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad that we covered this because there's many movies that I'm very excited about talking about, and like me and Aaron discussed, we're gonna try to do some more even smaller bite size, easy consumable episodes for people. Which we have lots of talks. I want to do some live stuff. So everyone like pay attention to the YouTube on both of our sides because there's going to be a lot of live content that'll be fun that we want to hear your interaction. We'll try to let everybody know, especially throughout Instagram. So make sure to like go look for First Class Horror on Instagram because we'll start putting stuff out. Like I really want to do a Night of the Living Dead watch along because these
Yep.
movies that we are able to achieve to do because they are open domain now, and there's a bunch of them, more than you'd think. Some that we've probably never seen that are goofy as hell that would be fun to discuss. But I have a million and one ideas for both of our shows, and I can't stop being like, okay, I want to do this, you know?
I'm exactly the same. Yeah, there's a lot of. I like the idea of the public domain stuff.
Yeah,
I'm not sure like how many or which ones, but like I had seen before. I'm just looking at it here again now. Like you have like Carnival of Souls, Night of the Living
I love
Dead,
that.
White
Yeah.
Zombie, Dementia
That's what I'm saying.
13.
Some of these older obscure films are black and white that we can kind of like, shoot the shit, you know, chop it up while we watch it. Because
But
like
yeah,
Carnival of Souls, I watched that outside when I was like on mushrooms, and it was weird and trippy watching that shit like on a barn.
this was this was fun. I forgot. not that I forgot, but I don't think I realized how much I actually appreciate how well put together this movie was. And
Yeah.
while I know the second one isn't nowhere near this, I'm actually
Yeah.
pretty excited to cover part two, to be honest.
I might go watch it after this and then write out my thoughts. And then if you want, we can put that out next. But there is stuff coming. We're gonna do Dead Silence for sure. That's
Yep.
one of my favorite films. I want to shout that out because I do want to do that, and you will probably hear it sooner than later.
Hmm.
One of my favorite probably of all time when it comes to the creepy aspect of it and there's so many good things about that film and what it did to me as a kid and how it did scare me. One of those films actually did freak me out, but this one, yeah, I've always liked this film. When you said you want to talk about it, I'm like 100%. Let's just cover this individually instead of doing some sort of deep dive because like there's enough to talk about. This we did an hour and a half on this movie, and we thought we could keep it to an hour, but it's too good. There's so many things
Yeah,
that like
it
about
is.
the film I like.
Yeah,
You
when
know,
you really start to analyze it, you kind of see things that you maybe didn't see previous or whatever. But yeah, I enjoyed this. Like Tom said, everyone make sure to keep an eye on the Instagram. Is probably where we're
yes.
most active, and yeah, the YouTube channels for video content, some live content coming up, and things like that. And yeah, you'll probably see Hills of Eyes 2 next, and then right
Yeah.
after that, we'll be jumping into a pretty extensive deep dive on Dead Silence.
Yeah, I feel like we got to do 2 hours on that shit.
Yeah,
Just
for
because like
sure.
it's so good. I
For
and it
sure.
creeps me out. I love ghost stuff, and they're like like for even my side, we're gonna be doing some really big deep dives into some serial killers and some weird stuff and some fun content. So make sure to go check that out and check out the Instagram and even Rumble for both sides because Rumble we're going to be able to maybe do some very like especially for some films maybe the video will really promote to go to Rumble because it's
Hmm.
very uncensored and we may be able to say a little more and show a little more than what we can on YouTube because YouTube's getting very censorshipy.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, it's sad.
I never know how
All
to
right,
sign out of these things. Wait, let me do
I
my
know.
fucking Spock hand.
All right, au revoir. If you kill the dog, I will kill you. Just kidding.
Bye.
I'd rather see someone get